here's our reference photo for today. We're painting a sunflower. If you'd like to have this reference photo for your own reference on your phone, take a screenshot right now. I'm gonna hold this up for another few seconds. Take a screenshot if you want the reference photo. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, screenshot it. So we're gonna be painting this today. We're gonna start out with a pencil sketch just to kind of get the shape of the flower and the leaves. We're not really gonna paint much of the background here. We're really gonna focus mostly on the flower and the leaves. We might do like a really loose color in the background, but nothing like, we're not gonna actually paint the field in the background. We're just focusing on the flower. So that's gonna be fun. We're gonna work in a couple of layers. So we're gonna put down one layer first of just kind of local color. So that's just the blank color without any detail. And then we're gonna put some details on top of that. Okay, so that's kind of the game plan. I will be referring back to this reference photo as we work. I can't necessarily put it in the screen along with everything else, but I will promise I will bring it back. The first thing that we need to do is put some water in each of our watercolor pans. So I just like to use my brush and the water in my cup. You can use a spray bottle too if you would like. And we're just gonna put a drop or two of water in each color, and this just gets all the colors dissolved and ready to paint with. And while we're doing this, just my usual announcements. This is Paint and Sip. This will be uploaded to my YouTube channel after we're all done here, probably later today. So if you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, that's linked in my bio. Please do be considerate to everybody in the comments. Be nice to me, please. This is supposed to be a safe space just to paint with other creative people. And also be kind to yourself, especially if you are new to art. This can be challenging. This hour today is all about just being creative and trying something new and maybe learning something. So it's not necessarily about making a masterpiece here. So we're just trying to learn and have fun and enjoy the process. So try and have that mindset as we're going in. Okay, so we need to start with our pencil sketch. Also, as we're going through this live, if you double tap the screen, that sends me likes and it helps me out with the algorithm, sends this live off to more people, which means I can continue being an artist in kind of a couple steps. So if you'd like to double tap the screen, just do it anytime throughout the live. That does help me out. So we're gonna start with our pencil sketch here, and you can see I've already started just a little bit just to kind of get my bearings here. We just need a circle. We're gonna start out with a circle. This is the center of the flower here. So you can see the kind of proportions here. It is about a little less than a third of the paper wide. So you can kind of proportion that to your own size of the paper. If you imagine that this circle is about the same as the distance from the edge of the circle here to the edge of the paper and here. Maybe a little bit smaller. So you can kind of proportion it that way. So I've kind of done that. Mine's probably a little too small, but I'm just gonna go with it. So just a rough circle. It doesn't need to be anything. It does not need to be a perfect circle. Just give me a rough circle. Try to draw lightly as well. And then we need to do a bigger circle. We're not going to draw out individual petals right now. We're going to just do that with the paint, but we do want to have kind of a cohesive circle so that all the petals end up being about the same length. So we're going to draw a larger circle around that. Just a rough, light circle. That's about the same distance all the way around from the center. I use kind of these sketchy lines so that I can kind of redirect where the circle goes. Okay, so that's where all the petals are going to approximately end at. And that will just give us a guide so that all our petals are about even. Okay, now we need a few leaves. So we've got the stem going straight down here. We can't really see a whole lot of the stem, but we'll put a little bit of it right here at the edge of the flower. And then we've got these leaves, which you can see are kind of heart-shaped with just serrated edges. So we've got one here. We'll probably do this one here that goes off the page. And we'll do this one here. And maybe we'll do one more like right here to fill out the rest of the composition. But we don't need to include all of these leaves. Okay. So we'll start with the stem. We'll just do a little bit of it going straight down from the center. And then we'll start with our heart-shaped leaves. So I'm going to start with one right here. It's okay if they go off the paper. The leaves are just there for decoration. And we kind of have these serrated edges, so just kind of make a little zigzag on the edges. Draw the vein going down the middle as well. We can draw one out here to the side. This will be kind of a flattened heart shape because it's kind of sitting out to the side here. Like that. And it's kind of behind that first leaf. Maybe we'll do one kind of coming out this way, right off the page. And maybe we'll do one more sitting maybe right around here. Like that. There we go. Okay, and then any spot that you think you might be able to see this stem behind the leaves, fill that in. I will not be able to because my leaves kind of overlap it. But there's our basic sketch. That is really all that we need right now. It's a little bit more than we usually do, but we like to get a little bit of a base down. Now, if you did draw really lightly, then you can just leave it like that. If you have an eraser, you can lightly erase some of these lines so that we are not seeing them, especially this circle here, so that we're not seeing them when our finished painting is done. We just want these to be a guide as we begin painting. We don't want a big old dark circle around our sunflower at the end. So I use a kneaded eraser. You don't have to, just whatever eraser you have. I do recommend buying a kneaded eraser if you're into art. This is a great tool. It's like a putty, and it picks up the graphite instead of rubbing it around like a traditional eraser does. So you can kind of gradually erase things like this. So they're really cheap. You can get them at any art store. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do, painting-wise, we're going to start our painting now, is fill in this middle of the flower. So we're going to use some reds, some oranges, this is and then some dark browns for a little bit of detail. And yeah, that's what we're going to start with. You can find it on Amazon too, a kneaded eraser, not just in an art store. I promise they are in most art stores though, in the drawing section. So I'm going to use a smaller brush now, and we're going to mix a couple of colors. We want a reddish brown, maybe kind of an orangish brown, and maybe a little green as well. So we're going to mix all three of those. I have for the first reddish brown, I have a burnt sienna that I'm going to use and mix with brown. If you don't have burnt sienna, just mix red and brown together so that we get something similar to this. I'll swatch this for you. Here's that reddish brown. Yes, these videos are posted on my YouTube channel, which is linked in my bio, so all of the previous paint and sips are there / on my Instagram. Ooh. And then this one will be uploaded later today. Then we also want an orangish brown, so we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to mix orange with brown. And we'll get a slightly lighter color. See there? So there's that different color there. And then I think we're gonna do green with brown. You can see a theme here. And we're just gonna use a touch of this when we paint. This is just gonna be a little bit of an accent and with all those oranges. There's that green. This is a good palette already, I like this. And then our last one is just gonna be plain dark brown. So whatever brown you have in your palette. I like to mix a little bit of gray into that just to darken it a little bit, but we need a dark color. So these are our 4 colors. A lovely autumn palette, I would say. Yours don't have to match mine exactly, but that's kind of what we're going for. So this was brown and red, this was brown and orange, brown and green, and then just brown. Okay. Now, well, something else that we should kind of notice is that we have kind of 2 concentric circles in this center of the flower. So we have this kind of outer ring here that's more red, and then we have this internal ring here that's more orange and green. So that's what we're going to kind of do there. We're not going to add all of these little details with the seeds. That's too much detail for today. So we're just going to kind of simplify this a little bit and use the watercolor to our advantage and let it kind of do what it wants. So let's start with the reddish brown here, our first color that we mixed. We're going to start by using this to create that ring on the outside. So I'm just going to put down a small layer. Again, if your circle is not perfect, it is okay. I'm not worried too much about creating a perfect circle here. So we've got a smaller ring on the outside of this reddish brown, and then we're going to go immediately into our next color, this orangish brown, and lay that down right next to it. It'll kind of sink into that other color, and that is good, that is fine. Let's fill in most of the rest of this circle, maybe a little bit of on the inside here, like this. And then we'll take our green and just fill in a little bit on the inside. So we don't want this green to be all of the inside. We want some orange still to be in there too. So you can kind of see we've got that concentric circle situation going on there without too much detail. Then we can take our dry brush and pick up a little bit of that texture, or pick up a little bit of that paint and add some texture. So I'm just drying off my brush, and I'm, while it's still wet, going in and picking up some of this color in here, and you can just kind of making dots, and you can see that that's giving us some texture here on the inside. Okay. You can only do that when it's wet, so make sure you do that, all of that somewhat quickly. Hey, we got 2,000 people on here. Hello, everyone. This is Paint and Sip. Welcome. We are painting a sunflower, but it's funny how some things in nature look like other things. All right. Now, as we're kind of letting that dry, we can take a smaller, I'm going to take a smaller brush if you have one, and we're just going to kind of go around the outside, the very outside of this, and add a little bit of our darkest brown. If your painting is still wet, it'll kind of blend into those other colors. If it's not, just kind of use a dotting motion and add a little bit of texture to the outside. This will give us a little bit more three-dimensionality in the center of the flower, because this will be kind of the shadow area. So again, I'm just using the small brush with that darkest brown, just kind of adding a darker rim around the outside and a little bit of texture to that edge. It's also a nice stormy day here in Cincinnati, so you might hear some thunder and maybe we'll get some rain, which will be a good painting vibe. So I'm just adding a few dots to the outside here. Feel free to add as much texture as you like with this dark brown. Keep adding as many dots as you want. Kind of see that closer up there. Doesn't really look like anything now, but it will. All right, how's that going for everybody? Am I going too fast? Are you caught up? Let me know where you're at. Too fast. Perfect speed. Okay. I'm seeing a couple too fast, so I'll go ahead and take a quick break here. Let you guys kind of catch up. If you've got any art-related questions, feel free to let me know. I will also put the reference photo up here so you can kind of see it. We've gone a little darker for the middle of the flower, but that's okay. You don't have to match the colors exactly. Let's see. Really nice watercolor pigment. Yeah, I really like this palette. I do these lives every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So you're welcome to join me again if you'd like to. Do you have a certain brand of paint you prefer? Yes, these are Winsor & Newton paints. They are professional grade watercolor paints, which was kind of my first big splurge as a professional artist, and I really like them a lot. You don't need it, but it is nice. Where do you get your brushes from? I have a local art store called Plaza that I get most of my art supplies from. I think I might have gotten these online from Blick, though, which is another art store. These are Princeton Neptune brushes. I realized I haven't gone over my supplies for today, so I'll do that really quick. This is Strathmore watercolor paper. This is Winsor & Newton paints, watercolor paints, and then these are Princeton Neptune brushes. All of my art supplies, and not just this, but everything that I've kind of tried and would recommend is linked in my bio. There's a tab called Art Supply Recommendations. So if you have some art supply needs that you would like my recommendations on, that's where you can kind of go to check that out. All right. Yes, this will be on my YouTube. So we're going to go on to our next phase here. I'm going to leave these colors. If you have room, leave those colors because we might go back and add a little bit more to the center of the flower later. But we're going to move on to the petals. So for the petals, you will need a lighter yellow, kind of a golden yellow like this. And then you'll also need an orange. So I'm going to mix those two colors, just two. And we're going to mix both. Okay, so here's our orange. How long do you spend on paintings? Hours, days? It really depends on the painting. It depends on the material. These lessons here are 1 hour, but I will spend anywhere from an hour to, a month on a painting. It just depends on the kind of painting and what I'm using to paint it. Okay, so those are our two colors. And what we're going to do is put down these petals. We're not going to worry about any of the detail, any of these like lines in the middle of the petals. We're just worried about the shape. So we're going to put down the shapes and a little bit of orange to the center of, or the beginning of the petal here towards the center of the flower. Whoa. And let that kind of blend in. So I'll show you how we're going to do that. So I'm going to use probably going to use my medium brush. This is a 4 round, and I'm going to go into my yellow color. And these petals are kind of oval shaped with pointed ends. I don't know how any better way to say it than that, but we want them to be a little bit irregular shaped, but that's kind of the idea. So we want them to be pretty skinny where they connect with the center of the flower, get wider in the middle, and then pointed at the end. So you can kind of paint those out in that sort of way. Okay, so you're going to paint maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 flowers here. Make them kind of irregular shapes. Don't be afraid to make them kind of wiggly. They're going to overlap as well, so don't feel like you need to paint them separated. And then once you've painted a couple, take that orange and then just touch it in the beginning of that petal there, right towards the, the center of the flower there. And you're just going to touch it, and that orange will kind of make its way up into the yellow. Okay, so that's kind of the process here. And we're just going to go around the entire flower and do that same thing. So keep adding these petals. Again, they're going to overlap. That is okay. don't worry about any gaps in the beginning here. We're going to fill those in later as well. And then these petals should be stopping around that outer circle that we drew before. All right. So once you kind of get the hang of this, you can kind of zen out and just keep painting petals. And I will try to look at any questions that we have while I do this. Definitely got some thunder rolling in out there, so that'll be fun. What is your YouTube name? I believe it's just Hannah Pickerel, but it's linked in my bio, so you don't have to find my actual channel. You can just go through the link in my bio on TikTok or Instagram, and you should be able to find it there. Thank you. Thanks everybody for your kind words as well. We got so many people on here. I do want to say, while we've got lots of people on here, I do have an Etsy shop. If you'd like to check out the paintings that I sell, that I specifically make for Etsy, you can do that. That is also linked in my bio. I sell regular paintings, bookmarks, stickers, what else? Prints, all of that good stuff. And the holidays are coming up, so if you want to get way ahead of your holiday shopping, you can do that as well. I will be very soon coming out with some fall themed art, so I'm excited about that. I've been brainstorming. Sunflowers are part of that, so I'm excited to have those come out as well. And I'm also thinking about doing some greeting cards, which I might kind of get into in the next month or two, since it's kind of greeting card season. Watching painting is so stress relieving. Good. I do like to have this be a place where people can just relax and paint with me if they want, but if not, just watch me paint. We are rapidly entering the ugly stage of watercolor painting, which is the stage where you're just laying down these colors and it does not look like what you want it to look like. It is a very common thing with watercolor. It just is what it is. Like before you've added the details and the final kind of touches, it just does not look right for most people. So be patient, especially if you're painting with me. We will get through it. We will add some detail and it will look better. And yes, this is a weekly thing. This is every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you'd like to join me next weekend, you can. You can kind of see as this is drying, you have this kind of gradient between that yellow at the end of the petals and the orange at the beginning. So that's why we put that orange paint in there. What supply supplies to bring. It is watercolor painting, so you need watercolor paint, watercolor paper, a couple of brushes. Theoretically, the brushes should be watercolor brushes, but that part you can kind of make do with other brushes if you need to. And then just, a pencil, some masking tape, maybe a cup of water, some paper towels, and that should be enough to get you started. Those are mostly household items though, so you can usually get those from your home. What is the center? The center is the center of the flower. I started my petals small and just got super big for whatever reason. That can happen. I know that can happen. That's why we draw the circle at first, so that we don't get our petals, too big or too small, but they can kind of get wider and skinnier as you go around. Keep going though. There's no reason to quit just because of that. Just finish the painting, and then if you hate it, you can burn it or throw it away. But at least you finished the painting, And you never know, you might like it a lot better once you're actually done. Alrighty, so I've gone most of the way around here. Let me know if you're painting along with me where you're at in your circle. If you're ready to move on to the next step, or if you need another minute or two. Make sure you've got that orange in everywhere before those petals dry. Only halfway, almost done, okay. I will not move on yet. Yeah, everything that you need is in my bio. All of my favorite art supplies and everything are there, so if you need my recommendations, that's where you can find them. I also get a small cut from Amazon Art Supplies, which is nice. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it just helps me out. So that's a good way to support me if you want to. So that's the art supply recommendations tab in my bio. Thank you for all the likes. I appreciate it, you guys. We're at 35,000. That's really awesome. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm sorry about your friend. That's no good. How did you make the center? So I'm not going to go back and talk about the previous steps just because we do need to move on. I try to get you guys out of here in about an hour. So I do have the tutorial will be uploaded to my YouTube, so you can always go and watch it later. Okay. As you're kind of working on your petals, I'm just going to tell you about our next steps. We're going to fill in the stem and these leaves with just a flat green, and then we'll go over and add a little bit of detail to that later. But if you're kind of starting to be ready to move on, you can kind of start mixing a green. I'm going to use this yellow that we already had for our sunflower, and I'm just going to mix some green into it. That'll give us a nice light sunny green. And we're going to water this down a little bit because we don't want the first layer to be too dark. I like that the petals have kind of melted together. Yeah. So then we're going to use some detail later as it dries to kind of pick those petals out again. But for now, we don't need to differentiate between the petals. They just can kind of all melt together. Can a beginner do this? Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to wait like one more minute. I do need to move on fairly soon just because I'm conscious of the time and I like to try and get these over with in about an hour. So if you have any other questions for me, please let me know. Oh, we're up to 45,000 likes, 46. That's awesome. I just looked and your paint is $50. It's probably a little more than that. It is professional grade watercolor paint. I talked about this earlier. Like I've said before, you do not need professional grade watercolor paint. I am a professional artist, so it's something that I can justify spending the money on, but you don't need it to make good art. So that's always my spiel with that, because I know it is expensive for paint, but this is my hobby and also my job. Can I buy this? It will not be up for sale yet, but I do, once I'm finished with one of these sketchbooks, this is the first page of this sketchbook, I do put these paintings up for sale on my Etsy. So the previous Paint and Sip sketchbook, all of those paintings are actually up for sale on my Etsy. So if you want to look at the previous lessons, if you enjoyed any of those and you want to own the one that I made, those are all available in my Etsy shop. Would it be beneficial to do a background wash first? So that's the thing about sunflowers and any light colored flower and watercolor. If we were to do a background wash first, we wouldn't get this nice vibrant yellow. So we might do a little bit of a background wash at the end, just kind of a loose one, but that's kind of the hard part, is that you'd either have to be really careful and before you even painted this, go over like where you think those petals are gonna be, go around that, or we're gonna kind of do it at the end where we just kind of do it loosely and we don't really have too much, it's not gonna be super precise, but we'll have a little bit of color in the background. So that's kind of the idea. Brand of watercolors, these are Winsor Newton watercolors. Okay, so with that green that we've mixed, I just used the petal, the yellow petal color and mixed some green into it, water it down a little bit. We're just gonna fill in the stem, oh, it smells like rain, and the leaves. I'm actually gonna switch to my bigger brush here because we don't need to be very precise. We're just filling all this in with a flat wash. It's not gonna, nothing complicated here. It's getting dark in here too. I really love, if you can't tell, I really love painting in a storm or just being in this studio. I've got lots of windows and it's a bit drafty, so I can kind of smell the outside. And it's my favorite thing to paint in the storm. It also keeps it from getting too hot in here, which is nice. So again, we're just filling in these leaves loosely with this light green, and we're gonna let those dry and we'll work on our flower, and then we'll come back and add a little bit of detail to these at the end. There we go. Filled it. Done. Any advice for a beginner artist who wants to open an online shop? That's a good question. Well, it depends on how beginner you are. I would say that, you know, painting a lot and, you know, having a lot of paintings to kind of work with is something that's really helpful. So if you have the time to kind of get yourself a portfolio, which is what that's called, and figure out what it is you like to paint, what it is that you're good at painting, what it is that you think you want to sell. Keep in mind that if you're selling something that you're going to make over and over again, you want to like selling it. You're going to want to like painting it, I should say. And then just go for it. Don't, you know, there can be a fear of failure there, which I definitely had when I first started. I was like, what if nobody buys my paintings? It's not necessarily about people buying your paintings. It's about trying and doing it and saying that even if it doesn't work, even if you stop doing it later, you tried it and you did it. So that's kind of that's the advice that I have for you. I don't know if any of that was coherent, but there it is. All right. So next we are going to go back and work on these petals a little bit more. I'm going to show you what's going on in this reference photo. So we have these lines here that we're going to kind of try to loosely translate into our painting. And this will kind of be where we separate some of these petals. So we might add a little bit more of a shadow to the ones that are behind and a little bit less of a shadow to the ones that are in front. We're just going to use some oranges for this. So we've got, oh my God, it is so dark in here. Hopefully you can still see everything. We've got these oranges that we used, the orange that we used for our petals. We're going to use that. And then we might mix this slightly darker orange where I'm going to mix a little bit of burnt sienna, you can use brown, into that just to make it a little bit darker. So whatever orange you used for those petals, plus a slightly darker orange that we're going to use for some shadows. And we do want to water these down. We don't want to have these be too dark right off the bat. We can always work up the detail, but we can't go back. So we want to start lighter and work to darker. Okay, so I'm going to start with this, orange that we already used. And we're just going to start by making a few lines that kind of go from the base of the petal to the end. Give you a little bit of texture. So that's really all we're doing on that. So that's for the front petals. You can kind of choose which petals you want to be in the front. And then you can find a petal that looks like it should be kind of hidden behind two petals, and you can kind of fill that one in a little bit more. Instead of doing those lines, you can kind of fill it in with this orange. Oh, there's some lightning. Okay, so that's what that will kind of look like. So this one's in front and this one's been pushed back. You can kind of see now that this one looks like it's on top of this one. Okay, so that's kind of the deal. We're gonna go around our flower and add these line details to the ones that we feel like are in front. Here's the rain. And fill in and add more shadow to the ones that we want to push back and make look like they're behind. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to kind of let you go and do that. If you have any questions about that, feel free to let me know. But that's kind of the basic gist. And you can enjoy the rain sounds. I love oils. Soon going to start back. Nice. I really like oil paint as well. It is very, very different from watercolor. Thunder. Watercolor is probably the polar opposite of oil paint. So it's interesting to kind of do both. But I think that diversifying the materials that you work with can only help you become a better artist, and yeah, I think it's great to kind of diversify your materials. This is a perfect live. Good. I'm glad. Was that thunder sounds? Yep, thunder. I would not say that watercolor is super forgiving. It can be if you've got the right mindset and you're going for kind of the watercolor style. If you're going for something that's precise, it can be tough. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's the most forgiving. I think actually oil is pretty forgiving because it stays wet forever. You can blend it so much. As long as you know how to use your oil paint, it's pretty forgiving. You can just completely repaint the painting, which you can't really do with watercolor. I'll give you a little shot of this rain here that's happening. That's what I'm looking at outside. And as I'm working on it, I am just turning this painting because I'm right-handed. And so it's nice to kind of turn the painting and work with it this way. Oh boy. You might not be able to hear me talk. I've told you the storm was coming. I'm in Cincinnati, so I'm in Ohio. Yes, I've got my rosemary sitting on the windowsill there too. It loves the sunlight. My goodness. This is fun. If you're enjoying the live, I do have my Venmo listed in my bio and my PayPal is linked in my bio. I am a full-time artist, so tips and gifts that you feel like you want to give me do help me keep the lights on and pay the bills and such. So if you'd like to do that, any amount that you feel comfortable with is fine. Again, my PayPal is linked in my bio and my Venmo is listed in my bio. You can do it through there. Do you pre-draw all your paintings or all freehand? Sometimes I'll just answer specifically for these lives, we do paint something that I've painted already. Sometimes, like today, I like to work off of reference photos just to kind of show you. Oh! It's torrential out there. Just to kind of show you the process that I use to paint with while looking at a reference photo. Here's what's going on now. No, it's not hailing, it's just hitting quite hard against the window. So I hope you can still hear me very decently. And I hope you're enjoying the rain sounds. This is very peaceful for me personally. I'm enjoying this. Studio tour, maybe, at the end of the painting, perhaps. Thanks, everybody. Immaculate vibes. I'll be able to hear the tornado sirens. Someone asked if I should check the tornado warning. I'll be able to hear the sirens from here, so I'm not going to do anything until I hear those sirens. So we should just be working our way back to the painting here. Should just be working our way around, pushing some of these petals back with the shadow, and then putting some of the details on them in the front. And you can kind of build this up so as this orange dries, you can go over it again and make that color darker. Add some more shadow if you want to. But I'm going to kind of let you be the judge of what your painting needs, whether it needs more shadow or if you like the way that it looks now. And as you kind of work your way around, you should kind of be able to see it take shape. Rain sounds adding to the vibe. Yeah. Name of my Etsy shop is Hannah MP Art and Prints. It is linked in my bio, so you can check it out there. You don't have to search the full name. Tornadoes are, well, I used to think so because I am not from the Midwest. I'm from Seattle, where there are no tornadoes. There are earthquakes. But after living here for 3 years, there haven't actually been any tornadoes that have happened here while I've been here. But the people around here have convinced me that it's really not that big of a deal because they act so nonchalant about it. So I don't panic because they don't panic. Thanks, everybody. How long have you been doing lives? I started doing them in, let's see, the winter of 2020, I believe. Are we just using the lighter of the two oranges still? So you can use either. So you can kind of stick with one of the oranges if you want, but like I was saying before, you should kind of be the judge of what your painting needs, how much contrast you want there, and you can kind of, I would recommend you start with the lighter orange. I've been just using the lighter orange so far, and then if you want some places with deeper shadow, you can go over them again with that darker orange. So that's what I would kind of recommend you do. Ooh, that's a good one. Turning out really lovely. Thank you so much. Thanks, I'm so glad. How the lines you're painting change so much. Yeah, I don't know. Just as we go around the painting, I kind of try different textures and techniques just so it doesn't get too monotonous. This is watercolor. Is it easy to fix mistakes in watercolor? No, not really. Once it's down, it's kind of down. So you got to either, fix it with something on top, but you also can't really paint light on top of dark. You can only get to darker paint. So you can kind of do some things, but some things you just kind of got to accept about your painting. And that just kind of comes with practice and knowing what you can kind of fix and what is just going to be part of your painting now. All right, I'm almost down to my last petal here. And just for the sake of time, we're probably going to go over an hour here, so I apologize. Wherever you're at in your flower, you can take a pause there because we're going to move on to our leaves. I just want to show you how we're going to paint the leaves, and then you can always go back. I don't have any other instructions for you on the petals here, so you can always go back and work on those later. Continue adding up those shadows. Keep adding that orange, but you don't need to do it all now if you're still working on that. We're going to move on to the leaves really quick, and then you can go back to it. Okay, so for the leaves, we're just going to do some really simple. This storm deserved an extended lesson, absolutely. I don't mind going over an hour. I just like to try and keep people on a schedule here since I tell you what we're doing. We're going to just add a little bit of green texture here, maybe a little bit of shadow on one side of the leaves. Nothing too ridiculous because we want the focal point of this painting to be the flower. So we just want a little texture to the leaves, make them a little bit more realistic, but nothing like super detailed. Okay, so we're going to make a slightly darker green by mixing together green, and I like to add a little bit of blue to make it darker. Instead of adding black, try adding blue to your green to make a darker green. And I'm using my big brush because I don't want too much detail here. And I'm just going to start adding some texture to these leaves. So I can kind of add these lines, I can add just kind of some splotches. Whatever you kind of feel, kind of going along the direction of the leaf there, kind of like that. We're gonna get some sun coming out now. Maybe on the other side, we just kind of take this darker green around the edges. Maybe bring it in for some of these veins. And then you can take a damp, clean brush. And before this dries all the way, you can kind of soften all of that texture with the clean, damp brush. So you can either leave it splotchy if you want kind of a more impressionistic texture, or you can use that clean, damp brush to blend that out a little bit so you can see how that kind of works. Here comes the sun now. Getting lots of weather today. How soon will we post your YouTube tutorial? It'll be at the end of the day, by the end of the day today. I'll probably try and do it sooner, but you never know. I can't download it immediately from TikTok. It takes a little while, so. Okay, so we're just gonna keep adding this texture here. This is another thing that you can kind of build up over time. So if you wanna just use some lighter colors now, you can go over it again later with some darker colors. Add those shadows like you have been doing with the petals. You can also use our dry brushing technique where you dry off your brush all the way and use that to add some texture. I'm going to kind of let you be the own boss of your painting on this one, giving you these ideas. Did you study painting or are you self-taught? I was, let's see. I took lessons in high school and stuff. I took I just took art classes, I should say. Just art classes in school. And then in college, I was an art minor. I just did that honestly so that I could keep making time for art and keep learning, but I did not have being a professional artist in my ideas for what I wanted to do with my life. So I have taken, college level art classes, but I did also spend a lot of time on my own as a child and as a young adult painting just for fun. So I've learned a lot from classes. I've also learned a lot from just doing it. Is this the same account that did an abstract watercolor of bright colored buildings? Maybe. I don't think so, but you never know. Sometimes I forget the things that I painted. I don't think I did. I do more landscapes. I don't necessarily do abstract paintings. Now that storm is mostly gone. It's passed over. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing here with this texture. Nothing too detailed, like I said, we're just kind of adding some interest to these leaves so they just don't look like green blobs. What did you think you'd grow up doing? Just curious. So I'll tell you the brief story of my life was that I really enjoyed psychology. I took a psychology class in high school, and so I wanted to do that in college. And then once I was in college, I really wanted to be a professor. I wanted to be a psychology professor, and that was kind of the goal. So I moved to Cincinnati to work at Cincinnati Children's as a research coordinator, which would help me get into grad school in psychology. And then I did that in Cincinnati for 2 years, and that was when I had started to actually be able to sell my art professionally. And I was staring down 8 years of grad school, which is how long you have to be in grad school for a PhD in psychology. And I was like, I really don't want to go to grad school for 8 years right now. That's the rest of my 20s and into my 30s, and I don't know if that's worth it. So I decided to I had been kind of making money on Etsy and just by doing my art, and so I decided to give that a try. And that was last October that I quit my job officially. So it's been about 10 and a half months now, and I've been enjoying pretty much all of it. There have certainly been some tough moments, but I am so happy with my choice, and I'm happy to be painting every day and doing what I love for work, and that is so that's the brief story of how I got to where I am today. All right, so we just have one more small detail here. Again, if you're still working on the leaves, you can come back to them later. We're just going to finish up with the center of the flower and give ourselves a little bit of a shadow in the background. Or I should say kind of filling in the rest of the spots here. So I want to... Do you find it annoying to have to wait for the paper to dry between adding more layers? No, I don't really find it annoying. When I'm just painting by myself, I use a hairdryer, and so that speeds it up. And then here, I'm just enjoying painting with you all, so I don't really get too frustrated by that in particular. Okay, so I'm going to add with our colors that we used originally for the center of this flower. I'm just going to use that reddish brown or orangish brown to add a few little dots kind of on the inside of this flower here. And this will just give us our final kind of texture that we want. So again, I'm just using this reddish brown, orangish brown that we had before, adding some texture on the inside, adding some more shadow on the outside, just like that. Thank you. Yeah, every Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. So that's what I did there. Nothing too complicated, just a little bit more texture on that inside there. Okay, and then we're going to take that dark green, that green and brown that we mixed for the center of the flower again, and we're going to use that to fill in any of these gaps that we have in the petals here. So this should be a dark green, and this is going to be, to the viewer, this will kind of be that green part of the back of the flower. You know what holds the flower in place? You can kind of see these green leaves coming out. What holds the back of the flower in place. So that's why we're using a dark green for this. That's kind of the color that makes sense. So any gaps that you have in your petals, just fill them in with a nice dark green. And this should hopefully kind of bring the whole thing together. And as you kind of do this, if you kind of look at your painting and you're like, oh, I think that needs a little bit more shadow, you can always go back and keep adding some more shadow to those petals. Sometimes adding a darker color will show you where you need contrast in the rest of the painting. So I'm probably going to go back, probably offline, and add a little bit more depth to those petal shadows, just to kind of really make it all cohesive. The calyx is the green part in the back. Nice. Mercari, I've never heard of that before, so I'll take a look at that. Comes that sun again, nice and toasty. And while we're doing this, this is one of our last steps. I think we'll do one more last step after this, but just my usual announcements before everybody leaves me. My Venmo is listed in my bio and my PayPal is linked in my bio. So if you'd like to leave me a little tip or a gift for today's stormy lesson, you're welcome to do that. That is always appreciated. Any amount that you feel comfortable with is totally fine. Again, PayPal is linked in my bio, Venmo is listed in my bio. My Etsy shop is also linked in my bio, so if you want to take a look at all the paintings and bookmarks and all that stuff that I sell, offline, the ones that I paint by myself, you can check that out too. It is always really appreciated when you support me there. My art supply recommendations are also linked in my bio, so if you're looking for some new art supplies and want my recommendations, that's where you can find those. And you can subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, which is also linked in my bio. And this, get that little dot, okay. And this painting, this lesson, will be up there later today, along with most of my other painting lessons. So those are all my announcements. Feel free to check all of those things out. It means a lot. Okay, the last thing that we're gonna do, and again, we'll probably go over these things again with another layer of everything that we did, so you're not missing any instructions. This is just the kind of painting that you can build up as you go. We're just gonna do a small wash in the background, just to give this something to sit in. I think I'm gonna do kind of a purpley blue, which will contrast nicely with the orange of the flower. So I'm gonna clear off a section of my palette. If you're going to do a background, would you do it before you painted the flower? No, we talked about this earlier, but because watercolor is transparent, you can see all of the layers underneath. And so if we painted the background first, you wouldn't get this really nice bright yellow. You'd get kind of a muddy yellow color. So that's why for paintings like this, where you have light or yellow, painting the background can be tricky because you don't want to do it in a way that will kind of mess up the colors of the main subject. So I'm just going to use a purplish blue, water it down a lot because we don't really want too much color in the background. We just want some sort of ground for this to sit on. So I'm just going to use this really watered down purple, lavender color. And I'm going to start from the outside and kind of work my way in. I might not fully touch the flower on the inside. We're just going to kind of do this loosely. So I'm just going to kind of go around like this. Don't worry about fully carving out the flower. You can if you want to. If you want to really be accurate, you can kind of go really close to the petals. I think I actually will do that, just kind of carefully. Carve around the petals here with this purple. But try not to overlap too much. It's better to leave a little sliver of the white paper rather than paint the purple over the yellow. So try not to get too close. For these leaves, you don't have to worry about it quite as much because it's not as contrasting of a color. If that makes sense. My Posca paint did pretty good. Nice. You can also add some little spots with just water in this background, so you can have some spots with really light, background color. You don't have to finish it all with a flat wash if you don't want to, so I'm just kind of dipping my brush into water and letting that purple kind of fade out on this side just for fun. It gives you a little bit more interest in the painting when one side is darker than the other. Maybe you add like a little bit of purple texture in there. I don't know. It's up to you. You can also use that dry brush technique and pick up some of the background color to give you a little bit of texture in the background. Lots of options of things that you can do to this background. There we go. Flip that back around. Should do a gold border after taking off the tape. I am a sucker for gold borders, but I don't think I'm going to do that on this one. I'll give you a sneak peek of an autumn bookmark that I've got in the works. This will be coming out in September to satisfy your gold border and your sunflower needs. This one will be available in my Etsy shop in a couple weeks or so. And I'm really excited about this one. Some really kind of loose sunflowers. So that's a little sneak peek for you there. Exclusive. There we go. So there's our background there. I'm gonna let that dry. And like I said before, I will probably add a little bit more texture and detail to the flower itself and maybe these leaves. But everything that I'm gonna do is what I've told you. So we don't need to stick around on the live for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and end it there. Thank you all again so much for joining me. I do really appreciate y'all being here. I hope you enjoyed the little stormy watercolor painting session.